Hello, everyone. This is Amir here with my buddy May, and another week and another four visuals we're going to chat with you about today. This is very exciting. We're going to talk about gauges, and we're going to show you four different ways to show gauges. Wonderful ways, different ways, all created by different people. They're all beautiful. They're all useful, and together they are so confusing. And together we are seeing today the power of the platform that allows people to create their own visualizations. And also at the same time, you can see that when you allow a lot of creative peoples to invent and think of new ideas on their own, they're going to come up with some really different ideas. And you can see how same things are being called different ways by different people. So it's going to be a bit confusing. I apologize in advance, but it's fun. So let's take a look. What we have here is we're talking about gauges. We have here a data set that we constructed here that shows some information about some KPIs. So let's put some data on the screen here. We want to put it in a table so everybody can see the actual data. So we're going to take a look here at the sales this year and the sales last year. And we're going to look also at we're going to take a look at the target as well. And these are the kind of information we have here, the main information. We're going to make the fonts a bit larger here so everybody can see. So we're going to go to general, and that I love it about the new tables are so easy to just go and add and make the fonts larger. And you can see here we're talking about 6 million and the target is 7.7 million. We have additional information. We're going to take a look as well. We're going to have some definition of what is good. So we're going to see, for example, that there's a definition of good, there's a definition of satisfactory, there's a definition of minimum, and definition of a maximum. And these are all definitions that are coming from the data because, in fact, you can go and say, I could have different definition for different categories of product, for example. So now you can see here, now we give the fonts a bit smaller. You can see here for hardware, services, and software, we would have different targets and different sales and different, and so it could be completely data driven. I'm going to remove the category for a moment. We're not going to use it for a while. So we're just going to look total of all the categories, but you can see that it all can be data driven in here. So we're going to see different ways to visualize this information. Of course, one of the ways could be just a table. That's probably not the most visual or attractive way to look at it. But we'll start with something that is called the linear gauge. And the linear gauge was created by the MAQ software team, and they sent us that visual and contribute to the community. And let's take a look what you do with the linear gauge. It is actually super easy and super cool. So I'm just going to take the linear gauge. I'm going to select it in here. It is this one with the orange tint in it, and we're going to go and we're going to define what is the value that we're measuring. It's going to be sales this year. I want to define what is the target, and it's available here. And at this point, we're kind of ready to go. It's so simple. It's kind of resizing itself. It's scaling itself beautifully to the real estate that I'm giving it. The taller I make it, the more it just maintains proportions very nicely. You can see here that it's automatically gives me a range that is double the value. I can add other information. I can define what is going to be the maximum. So I can manually define and say, hey, the maximum of it should be here. And now it's going to change the maximum. The maximum is now been set to 9.3 million instead of the 12 million. You can see the 7.75 moved around. I can even put the minimum and say I don't want to start from zero. I can put the minimum in this place. And now it starts lower. Let's not do that. I actually like how it looked before. Another thing that they have, which is pretty cool, they allow you to define trends. So these are the trends. Trend one is available. I'm putting trend one. And what's happened is, if you look at the actual trend here, I'm going to drag it so you can see the trend has been calculated as the growth, and it's minus 0.2. That's basically 20% down. It shows 0.2, and it is providing you the down arrow. Compare it to trend number two that I'm going to throw in here. And just select the visual, of course, and I'm going to throw trend number two. And now you can see it's going up. Now, why is it useful? Because sometimes you want to measure the trends versus two different time periods. For example, you say, what's the trend from yesterday versus what's the trend from the same period last year? Two different trends, and you can show them very nicely together. That's essentially the essence of the visual. Very, very simple, beautiful, ready to go. It reminds some people, some of the bullet chart. Its formatting is a bit different, but it's very, very common. So let's put it aside. So the next visual we have is the card with states. And this is the visual that was sent to us by the amazing fine brother Marco Russo and Daniele Pirelli, the team from SQL BI, the Italian team. That's your team. And if you look at it, they won the custom visual contest that we ran in September. And they sent several visuals. One of them was a synoptic panel that we discussed at length last week. This time, we're going to talk about another one of their visuals. It's called Card with State. And if you look at Card with State, let me just take a look at it. It's when I just drag it on the screen and convert to Card with State, it just looks like the Power BI card. You've seen it before. It's one of the built-in visuals. But this one, the Card with State, has some really cool improvements. Because what it allows you to do, it allows you to go and color the numbers and send messages to the user about the state of the number. It's kind of allowing you to treat it more like a KPI. So let's take a look. What can we do here? First of all, you have to define what is the value that is going to define to set the colors. It may be the same value. It could be something else. It could be that if the sales are maybe they're high, but if they're dropping, if the trend is bad, then I want to color them in red. So it could be also the conditions. So therefore, you see we have here something called state value. And for the most part, you probably just want to drag the same value to C into the state value. But all the measurements are going to be based on the state value. The moment you drag the state value in, it's already showing you a color. It's going to be the green color. But in order to make the visual work, you typically have to define several ranges of value. So you can define what's the range that is good, what's the range that is mediocre, what's the range that is bad. So let's do that. I want to define the minimum range. State 1 defines the bottom part of the range, and you define what the minimum, first starting value of the range and then ending value of the range. State 1 min, state 1 max. You can do it manually. You can actually do it at the formatting properties and define for each state the minimum and maximum values, or you can go and just make it data bound. And we've seen that many times before. Depending on the slices, you want to change those. So we're going to use the data bound options here. So we're going to say if it's between 0 and the minimum that I have here, the 4.9 million, I'm going to make it into the red area. So I'm going to take minimal and I'm going to drag it to the end of state 1. It's called state 1 max and dropping it here. And I'm going to say that if it's between 4.9 and satisfactory 6.2, we're going to make it into the yellow area. It's going to be here yellow, and I can see turning it to yellow. And everything above this, let's say all the way to maximum, we're going to define it as green. So now we have here the states, and I can in fact go and try it out in different situations. So perhaps instead of looking at the sales this year, I'm going to put the cost. Notice that I have here as well a cost, and I'm going to cheat. So imagine that we have the cost. Now the cost is 3.7. So if I were to measure myself, if I want to use instead of the sales the cost, I'm going to take the cost and drop it into the state value. So it's going to measure the cost against those numbers. So now it's going to drop to red because cost is less than the 4.9 that we had available here. So you can see how it's working. The other cool thing about it is you have an opportunity to send a message to the user. So for example, if I'm at the rate state, I'm going to go in here and say, hey, show me that bad boy. And I'm going to turn it on, and now it's going to just show me here the message that I wrote here. Now I'm going to go to the yellow state and say, I'm going to say here, almost there. Notice that no matter what case you're using here, it will always show the message in uppercase. By the way, let's test it. So I'm going to bring back the sales this year instead of the cost. And I'm going to, I need to turn on the flag. This is show the message, of course. So show the message is almost there. Now, the Italian, with their famous styling, decided that for our own benefit, it's better to see those messages always in uppercase, no matter if you wrote them in lowercase. They're Italians, I cannot argue with that. It's just a simple, beautiful way you can define the messages to be in different colors. That you can define manually the values. Everything can or make everything data bound. It's just working very, very nice. So that was the cards with state, and I want to talk to you about another visualization. It's a brand new one, just uploaded into the visual gallery. This is a visualization from CloudFront Technology, a beautiful visualization. Would be a bit controversial for the fans of Stephen Few who have some choice words to the use of that visualization, but I think it's just beautiful, and I really think if something's beautiful, go for it, man. So let's take a look. This is the dial gauge. I'm going to drop it here and we're going to see what it does. Now, you have to be careful a little bit here. The defaults are not the most intuitive, and also the naming may not be what I would have chosen. Great job, CloudFront, but maybe you could have called things a bit differently. So let's take a look. The most important thing that you have to set is the pointer value. This is actually the value that you're measuring. This is what determines in the gauge, the needle, where it shows up. So I'm going to take sales this year, and I'm going to drop it into the pointer value. When I do that, I immediately get the visualization showing up, the needle showing on the 6 million of sales this year. Beautiful. Now what we really want to do is define different ranges on the radio. This is where things get a bit confusing. I have to say the word. It really is confusing to me. It's working wonderfully, but you just have to know the names. So you see here we have a bunch of ranges. We have a minimum and maximum. So the maximum is generally going to show you. The minimum is typically going to be 0, and the maximum is going to be the actual value if you don't say anything here. So I can let's take the maximum here, and I want to set it to the. You see the maximum is 9.3 million. So we're just going to set the maximum to 9.3 million. And now we have 9.3 million. The needle is not showing up at the very end, and we have some room to go. Okay, but still haven't defined the ranges. So now we're going to define ranges. The first thing that you have to define is what is the area that is not doing so well. For some mysterious reasons, this area in this visual is called the actual area, and there's an actual start and an actual end. And I'm sure there's a very good reason for that, but I just haven't been able to grasp it. So it's called the actual start and the actual end. And what you really care about is the actual end, because the area between the minimum and the actual end is going to be the red area. So I'm going to say the minimum is going to be the actual end, and that will be from 0 to minimum is the red area. And now we got ourselves a red area here. The next thing that you want to do is define the area that is the yellow. Now, interestingly enough, you actually can define the beginning of the yellow area that is not the same as the end of the red area. So I have no idea what will happen. I didn't even try it. I don't care to try it even. What I'm going to tell you is all you want to do is define the end. If you already defined what the end of the red area, all you have to define is the end of the yellow area. The yellow area is called the target. And I want to take the target and say my target is going to be between the minimum and satisfactory. So I'm going to take the minimum satisfactory. So I'm going to take satisfactory into target end. And now I got myself the yellow area in here. And everything above the satisfactory we have defined as green. So that's how it works. Really, really have to be careful. Get used to the naming here. And there's some weirdness with having areas that may be overlapping or may have gaps between them. So all I really care about is the min and the max, the target end, the actual end, and the pointer value. And I can, from this point on, the visual is just really, really good. The other thing you can do is add additional information. For example, you can add the trend here at the bottom to show here some percentage information. And I can see minus 20%. So I can add more information about it. Very, very nice. So overall, beautiful visual. Just be careful with the naming here. So that was the radial chart. The next one is actually an old one that is one of the most popular ones that we have. Because if the radial chart is something that the Stephen Few fans will not like, the bullet chart is something that they love. It's one of the most popular ones. It's very, very informative. And I got, since we released it in the original version in the gallery, got so many requests, and we actually answered those requests. And there are a lot of secrets here that people are not aware of what can be done with it and the kind of improvements we have in the bullet chart. So it's really worthwhile to go over it. So let's take a look here. We're going to load the bullet chart in here. We're going to make for it some room here. and this is the bullet chart. We're going to start by measuring the sales this year, just dropping it in here, automatically set it into the value. And we're going to compare it to the target. All you have to just drop the target in here and things are already looking better. And by default, it sets some red areas, yellow areas, and green areas. These are kind of set by some algorithm. It can already look good, but I think the best thing you can do is actually go and define those. And there are two ways to define those. You can make it data-driven. So I can go in here, and for each one of the data values, I can define what's the target, the minimum, satisfactory, and good. This is one of the requests we got. Originally, it was all data-driven, but you can see here now it is, if you have a target, if you set a target value, then you can say the satisfactory range will be 50% of the target value, the good will be 100% of the target value, and the maximum will be 200% of the value. And that's the algorithm that determines the default distribution of the colors, because we haven't set anything else. I can of course go and say that the good must be 80% of the value. Here it's 180. Let's make it into 80. And the maximum should be 150, and so forth. It's very, very easy to control. Notice the three elements that we have. The bar chart represents the value. This line here represents the target. The black line here represents the target. And then we have the ranges. So typically the target will be somewhere in the green area, or maybe towards the end of the yellow area, and everything else just tells you how good you are doing compared to where you're supposed to get to. That's doing it manually. These settings are working when I don't set the data fields, but I can set it to be running by data. So I can say, hey, let's define that there's going to be a definition of satisfactory value. I'm going to go and drop it in here. Going to be a definition of good value. I'm going to drop it in here. So all you have to do is define the satisfactory defines the end of the red area. The good defines the end of the yellow area, and the maximum defines the end of the green area. So this is how we have it right now. So since the satisfactory is higher than the sales this year, we're still in the red zone. It's kind of pretty obvious to see it right now. So the other thing that we can do in this visual is the ability to go and break it down by category. None of the other gauges allow you to do that, but the bullet charts allow you. So instead of just having generic sales this year, I can actually say, hey, take the category and show me the sales for each one of my categories. I need to get here the categories. One more thing I can do here is also once I add the categories, I can go and add information about the units that are being used here. So I can go in here and say, let's go to the axis, and I can say the units, the measure units here. And you can see this is actually the measure units. Measure units. These I'm going to say these are going to be US dollars, and I can now have the US dollar showing up underneath the category. That's becoming pretty clear. We're looking at the sales this year for hardware in US dollars. Very, very nice. And lastly, and the coolest feature that we have here is the fact that once you have the categories, you can do the cross highlighting. So I can go and click and see how all the other gauges are changing their values based on the information that we have here. Very, very nice. We can also do orientation. So notice that I have here, it's all horizontal, but most people don't know that you can actually have here also the bullet chart showing up in different orientations. So I can say here, I want to show it vertical when the titles of the categories are showing up at the bottom. And I can see the hardware, the services, and the software showing up like this. So you can see it vertically. You can go and change the orientation to make it look perhaps the titles at the top, and now they're showing up at the top. You can even decide to go horizontally with the titles at the right. Very, very nice. Very, very easy to use. These options used to be that you had to know the various character combinations, but now we have a nice drop down. Beautiful visualization. Very, very useful. Control everything, fully interactive like everything else. Just piece of art. So that's it. Gauges. So many of them. So useful. So much fun. Thank you all.